Kia ora, Kiwi Koja here, and welcome to episode 58, Hongi's Rotorua campaign, part 3, the final part. This follows on from episodes 56 and 57, so be sure to watch those first. At the end of episode 57, Ngapuhi's firepower has prevailed, as expected, as it had at Maui Naina in Tamaki Makarao, at Matakitaki in Pelagia, and now here on Mokoia in Rotorua. Ngapuhi's disciplined fire has broken the Te Arawa lines. They're on the run. Te Arawa families watching from a distance see the decimation of the charge, and now warriors are streaming back in their direction. Most have plans should Ngapuhi prevail. For those with access to a fishing canoe, they head for it and await their men. Meanwhile, Hongi rouses himself, his concussion wearing off, but he has a terrible headache. Te Waira's second wife, Te Arawa, leaves Hongi's group and sprints off, overtaking the Ngapuhi warriors, heading for Puketi. She is on a mission. The fencing and forays among the cultivations provide areas where sections of Te Arawa regroup, attack and fall back. The Te Arawa musketeers use a foray for cover and blunt sections of the pursuit. It's rather futile, but now seconds separate life and death. Fishing canoes have pushed off, laden to the max. Others, waiting for their menfolk, face the difficult decision. Maybe they're dead. These canoes start pushing off. Some men arrive late and swim out to the canoe. Some board successfully, others capsize them. Confusion and chaos reign. Without a canoe, the majority are forced to swim. Others take to the bush interior. The running figure of Te Arawa is recognised. She's yelling at the top of her voice that Ngāti Rangawewehi, who wish to be saved, to follow her. Many, having no option, do. In fact, not just Ngāti Rangawewehi. They run to keep her in sight. They follow her up into Puketi, then to Tamatakapua meeting house. She begins climbing the roof, heading for the front apex. Those behind pause, having no idea what's going on. Their trust in her, their only hope. She reaches the top and straddles the main beam. Looking down, she yells for everyone to enter Tamatakapua, repeating Hongi's promise that anyone who passes between her thighs will be saved. People stream into the meeting house as she keeps repeating Hongi's promise. The meeting house becomes crammed. People pack the forecourt in hope. Ngapuhi enter Puketi and approach the meeting house, baffled at the sight before them. Te Arawa yells to them the promise Hongi made to her. They are not inclined to argue or waste time here, and set off to check the rest of the kāinga. Many Ngapuhi lining the eastern shore are laughing and shooting at the swimmers. Bodies float motionless. The canoes are well out of range, and the swimmers becoming so. A few Ngapuhi excitedly head into the bush to extend their pursuit, the thrill of the kill yet to be satisfied. Hongi and the other chiefs order the shooting to stop. Hongi wants no more Ngapuhi going into the bush. This has to be done in an organised fashion, requiring planning and intelligence. The young rangatira Marupo and his Pākaraka warriors, together with the seasoned Patuoni and his men, are given the task of capturing those escaping across the lake. Hongi wants them alive. There are enough already for the ovens. 200 Ngapuhi head for the canoes on the northern shores of Mokoia. Patuoni half-mans the Ngapuhi canoes. He advises Marupo that he'll target the fishing canoes, Marupo to deal with the swimmers. Marupo takes the paddles from the Ngapuhi canoes and heads east to the Te Arawa war canoes. Patuoni leads out with the 8 Ngapuhi canoes. Marupo follows with the 4 Te Arawa war canoes. Hongi, his chiefs and retinue, make their way into Puketi and approach the meeting house, Tamatakapua. The bizarre scene before him brings a smirk to his face. For a brief period, he forgets his throbbing head. He looks at Tawera, who shrugs his shoulders in some embarrassment. Hongi calls to Ao Kapurangi, "My word shall be honoured. Come down." Tawera breathes a sigh of relief. The outfoxing of Hongi by Tawera's wife, Te Ao Kapurangi, could have ended badly. Marupo takes his time, the swimmers virtually all heading for Waiohewa Beach, the closest point, 2.5 kilometres away to the east. For Patuoni, the race is on. They head for Waiohewa. They are gaining. The pursued fishing canoes now in panic mode. This will be the race of their lives. 500 metres from the beach, Patuoni rams the first fishing canoe and carries straight on for the next. Within the next 300 metres, they jinx and swerve, capsizing many canoes. About 20 have reached the beach. The rest capsized, the occupants floundering in the water, trying to reboard. Patuoni's canoes now turn like circling sharks. Those swimming now are strung out over 2 kilometres and slowly congregating into groups for mutual support. Many Te Arawa in the water are exhausted. The Ngapuhi canoes start dragging swimmers on board. Those not cooperating are shot or tomahawked. A smaller war canoe has so many trying to board at the same time that the canoe lists so much that Ngapuhi fall into the water. Te Arawa scramble on board, gather paddles and bludgeon their enemy. More Te Arawa board. The canoe sets off with its new crew and passengers for Waiohewa. Runs the Ngapuhi gauntlet of canoes and escapes. There are 2 similar instances of this. In one canoe, the rescued far outnumber the paddlers. The Te Arawa realise this and turn on the surprised paddlers, who are killed and jettisoned. So they escape with muskets. How good is that? The Ngapuhi now guard against such disasters and spend the next 2 hours ferrying the captive to Mokoia, then returning for another batch. In all, about 600 Te Arawa are captured. The canoes abandoned on the shore of Rotorua by the escapees are gathered and towed back to Mokoia. After Maui Naina and Matakitaki, the Ngapuhi are experienced at post-victory activities. Prisoners are separated into those who will be tortured, namely those with a connection to the Te Otarangi massacre. Those with facial mokos, they will be carefully beheaded, the heads cured for the trade up north. Those attractive women of status and children of a certain age, they stand a good chance of being assimilated into Ngapuhi, and then the rest. A fragile life of toil and hardship awaits, or the ovens. The Te Arawa wounded in the battle have been finished off. Tattooed heads severed, the bodies dragged to the beach, the old pushed out into the lake, the young gutted and prepared for the ovens. The Te Arawa captives begin their journey into slavery. They prepare the Hongis for their masters. Absolute obedience expected, or death. Separate Hongis are prepared for themselves, pigs killed, kumara distributed. For the Ngapuhi dead, tauhangas perform the death rites. Selected heads will be cured for returning to the bay. For the rest, cremation, ensuring no further desecration of their kin. The people at Ngaukawakawa and the rear guard at Whangai Korea are brought to Mokoia. A small contingent left to guard the mouth of the Ohau Channel. The plan to clear the interior of Mokoia begins. For the next 2 nights, sentries are attacked. With Ngapuhi combing the island, many now escape in the dark to the mainland. Hongi is bitterly disappointed that Tumakoha is not among the dead or captured. Ngapuhi have a list of Te Arawa rangatira they seek for utu, those that played a role in Te Peo Tarangi's death. Many were killed in the main attack. Mokoia, near the top of the list, escapes, but his son, Te Kuru o Te Marama, is captured. He and others are staked against boulders near Hinimoa's pool. Thin reeds pushed between their ribs, then deep into their lungs. They have many hours of dying ahead. In the cool of the evening, Ngapuhi rangatira soak in Hinimoa's pool, their aches and pains soothed. The groaning of the tortured attracting derision from the bathers. To the sound of great laughter, a bather emerges and pushes another reed slowly and deep before returning to cheering. By the 3rd day, the tortured are quiet in death. Ope are sent to look for Tumakoha, Moko Nuiarangi, and others on the list, but all return empty-handed. The many hot pools along this section of Mokoia are full every evening, the water curing skin afflictions and ailments. The conversation and gossip a delight. The sojourn by Ngapuhi on Mokoia has been a tonic for body and soul. The sexual tension in the warriors dissipated. The preparation of heads, the organising of prisoners, the logistics for the return trip, all near completion. Te Wera Hauraki senses that Ngapuhi chiefs feel sufficient utu has been obtained, and because of his wife Te Ao Kaparangi being of Te Arawa, he feels some empathy for her kin. He sends word to her brother, Hikairo, to come to Mokoia to negotiate a peace between Ngapuhi and Te Arawa. Hikairo accepts this very dangerous request. He secretly lands on Mokoia and is harboured with those whom Hongi has guaranteed safety. Te Wera calls a hui of chiefs, and after setting the scene, calls forth Hikairo. There is some apprehension, but in respect to Te Arawa, Hikairo is received by Ngapuhi. Formalities and debate follow. It is agreed that Ngapuhi has obtained sufficient utu. Now peace will exist between them. For surety, Ngapuhi will take Hikairo's wife, Maya, back to the bay. This peace only means that warfare stops, which is profoundly important. It allows Te Arawa to reoccupy their lands in safety. For the prisoners, it makes no difference. Their future is under Ngapuhi. There's been a falling out between Pomare and Hongi on Mokoia, the cause unknown. They agree to suppress their differences whilst in enemy territory. On the morning of departure, there is great wailing as those remaining on the island, the ones Te Arawa saved, farewell their kin into slavery. The canoes ferry those leaving to Ngapuhi. Those portaging the 12 war canoes consist of 500 Ngapuhi and 400 slaves. The rest will overland to Tauranga, where prisoners will be given to Ngaitarangi for their hospitality. They'll then bring the Ngapuhi canoes left there to the rendezvous at Waihi Harbour. The descent from 300 metres down to sea level is much easier. For both contingents, the trip is uneventful, although an annoying number of the Te Arawa slaves escape. After 5 days, all rendezvous at Waihi. The bad blood between Hongi and Pomare has tempered somewhat. However, Pomare and his warriors will campaign to the east into the Bay of Plenty and beyond. Te Arawa has promised to return Te Whare Umu to his people at Rotorua on the Mahia Peninsula, so will accompany Pomare in the short term. Hongi and others will head west, campaigning up the coast. It is near the end of April. The fleets leave Waihi, going their separate ways. It was February 1823 that the Rotorua campaign left the Bay of Islands. Now, in late May 1823, Reverend Butler records the first arrivals back to the bay. 4 months later, on the 30th of September, he records Hongi and a large number of canoes returning. What they got up to on their slow trip north is poorly documented. Now, if you think I've gone overboard with the gore in my micro details, then here is an eyewitness account of what Philip Tapsell saw when Hongi's canoes landed in Kerikeri. I shall read parts of it. They landed 40 prisoners of war. These captives were stationed in a row, and at a signal all were tomahawked. They met their fate with stoic courage and never betrayed uneasiness or suffering by the movement of a muscle. Some were killed with one blow, the others required several cuts to dispatch them. A blind woman, a great chieftainess, who was one of Hongi's wives, called for her slave boy. He approached, expecting to receive protection from his mistress in this scene of slaughter. But she seized him by his hair and thrust him under water, putting her foot on him and keeping him down till he was drowned. On that note, we'll bring Hongi's Rotorua campaign to a conclusion. If you like this episode, tomahawk the like button and stick your foot on the subscribe button. If you want to know how closely this episode follows Don's book, The Wild Wind from the North, then get it and read it. It's a great read. Anyway, hey kona, take it easy. Catch you next time.